Hi, are you worried about your organization's IT security? Do you not have a clear handle on your company's data? Would your systems going down cause your company to go belly up? Well, we're here to talk about how we can keep your company safe in an unsafe world. We're also going to talk about climbing trees. Let's get started. My name is Ashkan, and I'm an attorney, a cybersecurity expert, a nonprofit board chair, and a moral philosopher. And I've been protecting organizations for over 20 years. I started We Solve Problems, an IT and cybersecurity firm based in Los Angeles, after realizing that my fellow attorneys in practice needed help keeping their clients' data safe. I guessed that I could make a bigger impact building an IT firm, and I was right. Please take notes. I'm sharing with you the secret sauce to my company so you can get the benefit and make the world a safer place. This stuff is ever changing, but this is the best info we have as of this video date. So let's start with a few thought experiments. Imagine for a moment if all of your company's emails were leaked to one of your clients or maybe a competitor. What would that look like? Really think about what you'd have to do. Who would you need to call? Who would you start with? Would you start with your clients or customers? Is there a plan in place? What would you do if an employee erased an entire folder that was critical to operations and your backups actually stopped working months ago? What would you do to have to get that information back? What if ransomware locked down all of your workstations, your servers, and your files? How much downtime can you afford? Which services do you try to get back online first? What if $150,000 was transferred offshore yesterday? Could your organization handle that, knowing that you can't get the money back? What if an angry employee plans to sell your data to a competitor? How could you stop them? Are you preventing it now? In order to understand what to do, we have to understand what's going on and how the pandemic and other global issues influenced how the world works today. In short, there is immense pressure on those without resources, and it's easy to take to the internet and commit cybercrimes. The longer story relates to desperation and foreign policy, but ultimately it's about opportunity. Because of this, the internet has gotten exponentially more dangerous. Our goal is to prevent the loss of your company's resources. That means to keep your company data out of their hands, keep it from being locked up or deleted, and not waste any time or money. The good news is that cybersecurity is as straightforward as climbing a tree. The bad guys just want to grab the low hanging fruit, and unless you're specifically being targeted, which is very rare by the way, you can simply climb up to avoid danger. It's pretty easy, and I'm going to tell you specifically what to do on this video. The best way to climb the tree is to understand your company's chain of custody when it comes to your data. How did you get it? Or how was it created? Where does it go? Who has access? What's their position on the tree? And how would you get it back if it disappeared? From there, we can create policies that protect our data, like wearing a seatbelt, and we can create business continuity plans for each link in the chain, kind of like a fire drill. With these two, you can be prepared for anything. Let's get into some of those things that we want to be prepared for. According to Breach Secure Now, 90% of cybersecurity attacks are phishing attacks. This is where an attacker attempts to gather information about you or your company via your email. First, you have to identify phishing emails. Next, when you get a phishing email, mark it as spam so your email system improves its algorithm, not just for you, but your entire organization. Most importantly, this could prevent your weakest link from falling for it. You should be using some kind of awareness training in your company too. They're inexpensive and they'll test your team by sending out fake phishing emails to expose your weakest link. Finally, develop employee policies around cybersecurity. For example, all suspicious emails must be reported to IT. Now, here's some examples. You might get an email from Google stating that you've reached some account limit, or there's a weird sign in and you have to sign in to resolve the issue. A provided link takes you to a site that looks pretty good at first glance, but is still designed to accept your credentials. Look carefully at the spelling. And you know those little green certificates that say a site is legit? They can be faked. Stop trusting those. If you type in your info or the password manager autofills it, they immediately have access to your account. Your emails, contacts, files in Drive, all of your passwords stored in Chrome, and access to any apps you use your email to log into. Think about how many things that somebody can get into once they're in your email. It's pretty much everything. They'll start sending messages as you to your contacts in order to obtain information or initiate bank transfers. They might blackmail you with the risk that they might leak confidential company data or, in some rare cases, personal information. You'd be shocked at some of the things some people have had to admit to me when faced with this circumstance. These are, of course, people that I work with before they sign on with us. Another example, an email from iCloud stating that your iCloud account is in some kind of jeopardy and you need to sign in to resolve the issue. With iCloud access, They'll get your iCloud keychain, which likely stores usernames and passwords to a lot of services, including email and banking. They'll also get your contacts. They'll also get your photos. We were actually one of the teams to figure out that this was the attack used during the infamous celebrity iCloud leak. So, how do we combat this? Multi-factor authentication is a way of verifying that it's actually you who's trying to log in. The first factor is your username and password. The second factor can be a rolling code, an email code, an SMS code, a biometric, or an app-based approval. There are others as well. This ensures that bad guys can't log into your services since you're the only one with this second factor. This is the single most effective thing you can do for your security. It gets you about 80% up the tree with one move. If you take away one thing from this video, this should be it. Enforce MFA with every single online account you have. Enforce it company-wide so your entire team has to verify. That doesn't mean that they have to put a code in every day. That's a common misconception. It's typically just one time per device and you're good to go. If a website or application that you're using doesn't offer MFA, you need to swap to a competitor. There's no excuse for a site or app to have MFA in 2024. It shows that your security is not their priority. They can also be stored in encrypted apps like password managers. We'll get to that later. Biometrics are pretty good, but very few sites support it. However, if you use a password manager for rolling codes, you can actually get the benefits of biometrics and rolling codes. Email codes are not ideal because there are some rare but possible token tricks that bad guys can use to get those codes. You don't want to use your email. SMS is awful. An attacker can use a man-in-the-middle device to pick up all of your texts. Slight tangent, call 611, your cell phone provider, and have them put a SIM swap passcode on your account. That should reduce the chance of someone stealing your number just for the purpose of getting the MFA codes and other bad things. App-based approvals might be the worst. It's a pop-up asking you to log in. I can't tell you how many times I've heard of someone just approving them just to get rid of the pop-up. People just click them out of habit. It's insane. Please don't use that. If you are worried about deploying MFA, just talk to your IT. Trust me, they'll be dying to set this up on all of your company accounts. You'll also want them to set this up with a password manager. Next, spoofing protection. It looks at many data points within an email to determine if it's legit or not. It warns your team if something is off about the email, like an authentication issue, a content issue, a display name issue, something wrong with groups, or it just uses machine learning to compare that email with other fake emails. Turn this feature on. It's amazing. Both Google and Microsoft have this built in. Now, I mentioned that email phishing accounts for 90% of attacks. The other 10% come in many forms, from malware to vendor hacks to inside jobs. Another way the bad guys can get a hold of your email credentials and other credentials is by buying them from the dark web. The dark web is basically just a series of websites that's harder to reach than the rest of the internet. Tons of illegal activity happens there, but it's mostly the buying and selling of illegal information. Also, it's how countries communicate with each other in secret. It's absolutely fascinating. Quick example is that somebody might get a job at a big cell phone provider as an engineer, a qualified engineer, just so that they can access company data and sell it on the dark web. When you hear of a company getting hacked, this is most likely the reason. There's nothing you can do to stop them. You can only defend against the outcome. Get yourself some dark web monitoring. It's inexpensive and usually bundled with your email phishing tests as one product. Have someone in charge of the monitoring and reacting to issues. You usually just have to change a password or a credit card. You'll want to figure out how the breach happened, though, to try to avoid it in the future if possible. Let's talk about device security. What happens when someone steals an employee's laptop while they're on vacation? Did data just land in the wrong hands? Did you lose something that was only on that laptop? Mobile device management is a system that lets you control your employees' devices. You can track them to find them when they're stolen, remotely wipe, automate onboarding and offboardings, push out device policies and software, and auto update. An example policy is that all of your computers should have encrypted drives. If a bad guy has a company computer, they won't be able to get any data from it. They'll have to wipe it to use it. And if you have an activation lock, they won't even be able to activate it. So it becomes a paperweight. It's insanely easy on both Mac OS and Windows, but people just forget to do this. Another example, all of your companies should be running the latest build of your operating system. If you don't know, updates not only introduce new features, but they close security holes. Always keep your devices fully updated. If you have a device that doesn't update any further, it means it's end of life and should be tossed. MDM does all of this automatically and it's very inexpensive. Now, according to the National Cybersecurity Alliance, 60% of small businesses that experience significant data loss are forced to close within 6 months of a disaster. That number grows to 72% within 2 years. There are a lot of ways to lose your data. Here are some ways to protect it. Deploy anti-malware on every workstation. We actually put the best ones through a gauntlet of viruses every year, and for the past few years, Malwarebytes EDR turned out to be the best. Do not ever keep data locally on a computer, like ever. That's the best way to lose a lot of labor to a preventable mistake. All of your data should be in a cloud, and that cloud should be backed up. Speaking of backups, you should understand your backups. Talk to your IT, ask them what your RPO and RTO are for each service, and ask them to regularly report on this because it changes. Your RPO is your recovery point objective, which basically means in the event of a disaster, how far back did you lose data from? If your backups run nightly and you have a disaster at 5 p.m., you just lost the whole day's work. Your RTO is the recovery time objective, or in the event of a disaster, how long until you're back online? If you don't have any kind of redundancy, it may take weeks to get your systems back online. Can you handle that much downtime? Or do you need to make an adjustment? Also, your backups should adhere to backup 321. That's 3 copies in 2 different mediums, one in a different location. By this point, hopefully you don't have any servers, but if you do, it's time to migrate to the cloud. You shouldn't have any local infrastructure, which means you shouldn't have any open ports on your network, VPNs, or other network liabilities. The short version is basically that massive tech companies have figured out how to do this way better than you ever can. They can keep your services online with unmatched reliability. They also have a level of security that you can't touch with armed guards outside of their data centers. As a general rule of thumb, when possible, utilize big and well-known brands to run your services. Don't go with cheapstorage.com when you can go with Dropbox. Don't go with Rackspace Email when you can go with Google Mail. And don't go with Intermedia when you can go directly to Microsoft 365. Also, only get Microsoft 365 if you have really solid IT. There's too much room for error with that product to try to run yourself. Speaking of IT, speak with your IT regularly. When you think something is fishy, ask them. That should be the policy throughout your entire organization. Most IT contracts don't even charge extra for this. They know what to do and where to look to make sure that you're safe. And if they don't, it might be time to upgrade. A few grand can save you a few hundred grand, or maybe even save your business. Make sure that they're regularly reporting on things and auditing systems to proactively prevent issues. Ask them for documentation of your systems so more people in your organization understand how things work. Thanks so much for your attention. Please feel free to like the video and reach out to us if you'd like to see more IT content. Also, if you're a business in Southern California that needs rock solid IT support, you can contact us on our website in the description below.